just a quick update and an apology for not posting anything for a few weeks. I understand that those of you who support me must be feeling pretty short-changed. I've been really busy the last few weeks, essentially trying to organise a trip to Australia. Our only daughter and our only granddaughter live in Canberra in Australia, and we saw our granddaughter when she was 3 weeks old. That was more than 2 years ago, so we're fairly desperate to get out there. And it's only recently has that now been possible, because New South Wales and Victoria have opened up to fully vaccinated Australian citizens and permanent residents and their immediate family. Up until a couple of months ago, parents weren't considered immediate family for whatever reason, but they changed those rules in November, so we are now allowed to apply for an exemption. So it's been an absolute nightmare trying to organise this trip, because nothing's, although it's possible, they don't really want you to go, I don't think. So New South Wales and Victoria have opened up. So Canberra is in the Australian Capital Territory, the ACT, which is inside of New South Wales. So we can go there, but I've had to sort out exemptions, which means having to upload birth certificates and marriage certificates and residency status and all these lots of other documents to prove that we are indeed our daughter's parents and that she is indeed a permanent resident. And then we've had to sort out visas. Previous trips we've just been able to book flights to Canberra, but Canberra isn't an international airport, it doesn't have any international flights. So whereas before we could go to pretty well any Australian city, Melbourne, Perth, wherever, Brisbane, and then get an internal flight, this trip we specifically have to go to Sydney, because that's a lot of the other states are still closed. Either Sydney or Melbourne, but Melbourne's in Victoria, and Victoria, the state premier of Victoria, has a history of closing the border at a couple of hours' notice, so I didn't much fancy that. And the flights, I had to sort of make sure that we could get flexible tickets, because things could change any time, as I'm sure most of you are aware. I've still got some other documents to do. We've got to do an intention to travel, upload our vaccine status. I had to book a hotel in Sydney, because the flight gets in about 10:30 at night. And then airport transfers, and then Emirates changed the flight schedule, so the flight coming back, which should have been 9 o'clock at night, they changed it to 6 in the morning, but they didn't change a connecting flight in Dubai, so we'd have had 17 hours waiting in Dubai. So I had to change the flight, so we get back to Heathrow again, and then the airport transfer I had booked from Birmingham I had to change to get to Heathrow, and so it goes on. So it has been a nightmare, and it continues, because we have to get negative PCR tests within 48 hours of getting on the plane. So we've had to book express PCR tests and just keep everything crossed that they come back negative. So we're self-isolating at the moment, voluntarily. If the test doesn't come back in time, or if it comes back negative, we ain't going, so I'll have to cancel everything and reschedule it. So that's the reason I haven't uploaded any content. Apologies for that. Anyway, back on topic. The hot end, I made that brass combining block, which was a lot easier to make out of brass than it was aluminium. Tested that, it hasn't actually made much difference. Nothing that you would say is statistically significant, shall we say. It still runs at the same temperature that the aluminium one ran at, which is a bit surprising. I thought it might have run a bit cooler, but it doesn't. And I can't extrude filament at any lower temperature, despite having reamed the holes, etc. So a little bit disappointing, but it was easier to make. So I've still got about 100 degrees separation between the combining block and the nozzle block, so I can run the combining block at I can run the nozzle block at up to sort of 300 degrees C. and keep the other filaments in the combining block at 200. So if I want to improve on that, which I can do, I could either make the heat break more efficient, and I've got some ideas on how to do that, or I can use a small fan and blow some air over the combining block. But for now I just decided to run with what I've got. It's good enough. I don't have any filaments that need more than 300 degrees C at the nozzle. So I've got all the configuration files sorted out. Basically I've got 4 different configurations for this machine now, because I've got 3 different hot ends. So I've got a single input hot end, a dual input hot end, and then the 6 input hot end, but that can be configured either as a 6 input mixing hot end or a 6 input multi-material. So the configurations are different. There's a feature on the Duet that allows me to essentially have 4 different configurations, and then just one line in another configuration file points to the configuration folder to use. So just commenting out one line on a configuration file and uncommenting another one, I can switch between any of those 4 configurations very quickly. So that's all sorted out, and if you want to know a bit more about how to do that, leave a comment down and I'll do that in another video. I've also sorted out all the tool change macros. So effectively I've got the thing working like a tool changer would do. I can print multiple filaments. When it sees a tool change, it will the machine will just retract the filament, move the print head over the purge bucket, then wait for the temperature, then change the nozzle temperature to what it needs to be for that temperature, and wait for it to stabilise. Then it will purge the filament, then retract it again, wipe the nozzle and move the filament back to where it was, and carry on printing. So effectively it's working like a tool changer without the complexity and the stuff of physically changing tools. I just need to switch the extruder drive, if you see what I mean, and heat the nozzle to a different temperature. So again, if leave a comment below, and if you want to see the macros and how that's all set up. So I've been printing lots of temperature towers and retraction parts and this sort of stuff to find the best settings to use for different filaments, but I've only got PLA and PETG at the moment, so when I get my hands on some more filament I'll run those tests and get a profile for each filament. That's the other thing that tool change macros will do. They'll change the retraction settings and pressure advanced settings and anything else that needs to be changed that's specific to a particular filament. I haven't bothered doing any videos of any of these tests because they're just things like, they're just towers, just cubes with alternate layers of different filaments, just to kind of refine the process. Nothing much that would make much of a video. So changing between filaments is quite fast. Move the print head, wait for the temperature to come up, and I'm using 80-watt heaters. I've got 2 80-watt heaters, one in the combining block and one in nozzle block. So it changes temperature very quickly. Going up, that is. Cooling down takes a while longer if I've got one filament that's a sort of 300 and I've got to wait for the nozzle to cool down to around 200-ish for the next filament. That can take a time. So I'm thinking of adding another fan, either fixed to the carriage, or I might fix it to the frame near the purge bucket, just to blast some cold air over the hot end when it needs to cool down to the next filament, speed that process up a bit. And the other thing I need to consider is some filaments are going to require ideally a heated chamber, which is going to be difficult with my printer. I can heat the whole kind of booth that it sits in, but I wouldn't want to go much above about 50 degrees C because of all the electronics that are in there. But I have a plan that I don't know whether it will work or not. It's something I'm thinking about. Rather than heating the entire cabinet, is used a kind of focused heat. So rather than heat the whole chamber, use something like some halogen or infrared lamps to focus heat onto the build plate, and then maybe that would work something I might play with when I can, when I got some cash. I need to buy some lamps or some sort of heaters and see what I can do with that. One bit of good news, or it might be good news, is that Tim Kay from Filaprint has put my name forward to a sales rep for a filament manufacturer, which I won't name at the moment, but I've had a few conversations, and it could well be that they will sponsor me with some reels of filament, which would be good. So more on that in another video if it comes to fruition. And that's about it really. Just nothing terribly much to say, but more to say that I'm still here. Apologies for not putting up much content. I do have a lot of plans and a lot of things to do, but this trip to Australia has been taking up a lot of my time, and a huge amount of our savings. But anyway, we're fairly desperate to get out there. So that's it for now. I'll try and get another video out with something a bit more interesting to say shortly. Thanks.